Our first category of derivative contracts are forward contracts. So, what is a forward contract? Well, a forward contract is simply an agreement between two parties to exchange an asset for a pre-specified agreed price upfront, but on a specific date in the future. Here are a few examples. So, for example, in 1 year's time, maybe party A agrees to purchase 8,000 barrels of oil from a party B at an agreed price now of $50 per barrel, or $40,000 in total. We've locked in a price for the oil now at $50 a barrel, but we won't deliver that oil for a year's time. It could be, for example, in 1 month's time, party A agrees to purchase 500,000 US dollars from party B for 675,000 Canadian dollars. Again, we're locking in an exchange rate now, but the delivery of the currencies will take place in the future, in this case, 1 month. Or, in 5 years' time, party A agrees to purchase 600 troy ounces of gold from party B for 900,000 US. Again, the price is agreed now, $900,000, but the delivery of the gold will be in the future, in this case, 5 years' time. So what is the purpose of a forward contract? Well, as we've already said, forwards are over-the-counter, OTC contracts. Although they can be used for speculating, the customizability of forward contracts makes forwards very useful for hedging. For example, industries that are heavily reliant on commodities, such as an airline, for example, that relies on jet fuel, they can hedge the price of this jet fuel using forwards to reduce volatile prices and match exactly the amount of fuel they intend to buy over a period of months and years. When we talk about the components of a forward contract, there are 5 important components. 1, the underlying asset, whether that be a commodity, a stock, an interest rate, or a currency. The expiration date, when will the commodity, for example, be delivered? The price that we're going to agree upfront, as we saw in our 3 examples. The quantity, and the neat thing about a forward contract is the quantity can be tailored to the two parties. Futures contracts have standardized quantities and standardized expiration dates, whereas an OTC forward contract can be tailored between the two parties to match the exact quantity that the two parties want to trade. And then 5th, there's the type of delivery. And we've talked about this already. Typically, when we hear type of delivery, it's whether the derivative will be physically settled or cash settled. Let's now look at forward contract profit and loss diagrams. On the left, you see the profit and loss or payoff diagram for a long position in a forward contract. And on the right, you see the profit and loss or payoff diagram for a forward contract short position. Let's talk through the diagram on the left with an example. So let's imagine you are buying oil and you've agreed to lock in the price of a barrel of oil now at $50 a barrel for delivery in 1 year's time. So remember, you're buying the oil. Now let's fast forward a year. We now are coming to the end of the contract, the expiration, and now we're going to buy the oil for $50 a barrel. However, the spot price of oil at the time, this is 1 year in the future, let's say is now $55. We've now made a profit of $5 on each barrel of oil because we're buying the oil at our locked-in price of $50, whereas if we had to buy that oil in the spot market, we'd be paying $55 a barrel. So let's get into a worked example in even more detail, and we'll stick with the oil example. So let's consider a situation involving a forward contract, and if you can read the following scenario with me, that would be great. Let's imagine a party needs 10,000 barrels of oil, not in a year, but in 3 months. They're worried about the price of oil rising, so they enter into a forward contract to purchase those 10,000 barrels at $50 a barrel, but for delivery in 3 months' time. At expiration, like the example I've just mentioned, the spot price of oil has risen to $55 a barrel. How much money was saved from entering into the forward contract? And think about, what if the spot price had instead dropped to 40? Before I move on to the answer, I'm going to pause to let you think about the two scenarios. Okay, so here we have the question. What I built is a small model in Excel that highlights the two scenarios that were just presented. But instead of focusing on those two scenarios, I'm going to focus on drawing a payoff or profit and loss diagram for this future. And we're going to use and build a table starting in row 23. Just a quick reminder, in good models, we always have our inputs in blue font. Any number here that is not a blue font means it's a formula. So if you look in any one of these cells that is black or has black font, you'll see a formula. Just another quick reminder, if you want to format cells, so for example, we see it's $50 a barrel, you can do that quickly by selecting the cell you want to format and hitting Control-1, choosing Custom Format, and then in the Type window, enter the format that you want to have. So I'm not going to focus much on this table, which are the two scenarios that are directly related to the question. I'm going to actually use these inputs. So in row 18, I've created a small table with 3 inputs that I'm going to use to build a bigger table that we can then turn into a graph. So the settlement price is the spot price, and I'm going to start here, and I've already formatted this cell as an input. And I'm going to start by putting a 0 here, but you'll see as soon as I hit enter, not only is it in blue, but it's $0 a barrel because I formatted that cell already using Control-1 format cell. I'm then going to actually say, what would the difference be in terms of profit and loss for different settlement prices? And my settlement price increment I've put in as an input in cell C21. And it's an input purposely so that I can later change it. If I want to see increments of $10, $20, I can change that. The graph will automatically change because the table will automatically change. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say in cell B25 that it equals B24 plus the settlement price increment, but I need to lock that down, the referencing I mean. So I'm going to hit F4 so the dollar signs appear. But I'm not going to copy down yet. I'm going to wait. I'm going to go across in this model, and then I'll copy everything down. The next cell is how much are we buying? What's the quantity? And that is in cell C20. I'm going to lock that down again by hitting the F4 key, so I get dollar signs. I'm going to copy that down just one cell, so we have rows 24 and 25 done. The cost for the contract is basically saying if we exercise the contract, how much we're going to pay. Well, we know we're going to pay $50 a barrel. I'm going to lock that down with my F4 key and times how many barrels, which is the 10,000 barrels. And I'll copy that down one. I'm using the Control-D function to copy down. The cost without the contract is really what would we pay for the barrels of oil if we just had to pay the spot price. So in this case, we're going to link the settlement price, which is the spot price, times the quantity. And I'm just going to copy that down one, Control-D. And last but not least, we need to know our profit and loss in each scenario. So in the first scenario, we could have bought the contract if theoretically anyway, the spot price of oil was 0. We would actually have been better off not having the contract. So we're at a loss. So the way we're going to put this into cell F24 is we're going to say the cost without the contract minus the cost with the contract because we know it's a loss. And I'll copy that down one. Now, the reason I've gone across is now that I've done all the columns that I want to, I can highlight one whole row, in this case, row 25, and I can just copy this down. I'm going to copy it down to here. Maybe one more down to, and that quickly fills the table. And it gives me more than the two scenarios that were initially introduced. But why have I done this? So that then I can create a graph. And to speed things up, I've already have the graph prepared, and it's pulling the data in the table that we just created. Congratulations, you have a go, but you have just made a profit and loss diagram for a futures contract.